Today we're going to talk about dropped objects on the job. Dropped objects are a serious hazard on many work sites. As far back as 2016, there were 255 workplace fatalities due to falling objects in the United States, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Furthermore, OSHA estimates that over 50,000 struck by a falling object incidents occur each year on construction sites alone. Objects as small as a bolt can cause serious injury or even death when they're dropped from a higher level and they strike an employee that's working on the ground. Outside of injuries and deaths, dropped objects are responsible for a large cost to employers due to property damage incidents alone. So let's talk about some safe work practices to prevent dropped object incidents. The first thing that you can do is to eliminate the hazard, that is to remove objects and tools from higher levels, scaffolding or aerial lifts that do not need to be there. Removing objects that can pose a hazard to people working below is the best option to prevent a dropped object incident. Also, there are engineering controls. We use CAZs or barricade zones below higher work levels to prevent personnel from walking into the line of fire of a dropped object. We do have tow boards on our scissor lifts and on our boom lifts, and we can even go so far as to install tow boards if we feel that's necessary on higher work levels to make sure objects and tools can't easily slide off an edge to a lower level. Now, sometimes some of our GCs will place nets or some kind of protective barrier above ground level workers if there's a continuous work that's being performed above a work area. Another engineering control is the use of tethers. We have had jobs, most notably some of the ones that we've done downtown in the higher rise type buildings, where we have used tool lanyards, and sometimes that becomes a useful thing for us to have. Anchors for tools and objects that are being used on a higher work elevation. This limits the object from falling and tends to reduce the dropped object issue. Also, PPE. Now, anytime there are overhead hazards present on a job site, hard hats need to be worn. For us, that's just standard procedure. We're going to be wearing a hard hat. We're going to be wearing one all day, every day, even when we're welding. PPE is always the last line of defense. Wearing a hard hat will only limit the damage that a dropped object does. It won't prevent it from happening. Relying on eliminating the hazard or installing engineering controls to reduce the chance of objects striking ground personnel instead of PPE to lessen the blow. Now, look at all the work areas where a dropped object incident can happen. Situations such as using aerial lifts and working on scaffolds pose obvious hazards, but try to identify less obvious hazards. An example could be a large wrench sitting on the edge of a piece of equipment that has a mechanic working underneath, or even a hot cup of coffee sitting on top of some elevated thing like a welding machine or something like that, where these things can spill off or fall off or get knocked off, vibrate off, and fall onto someone. Paying attention to the smaller hazards translates to an improvement so that you can be cognitively aware of what may happen. Wisdom is thinking of the consequences. So let's consider how we can prevent dropped objects incidences on our site. And when you're working in your job area today, look for hazards that are associated with dropped objects and perhaps discuss them with your foreman or do what you can do personally to remove them and get them corrected.